Hello, warriors. How are you all doing? So, this is episode 5 of our new segment, Career Path. And I have another guest in the house. So, I will allow her to introduce herself and tell us what she does and the journey so far. So, over to you.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Funke Owolabi. I'm a medical doctor. I am training to be a GP here in the UK. So my path to medicine is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's unconventional because a lot of people take this path, but I studied in Ireland. Medicine wasn't my first degree, so I applied via the CAO to do um, biomedical science. I did that in Galway 4 years. I really enjoyed the course. At the years, um, I didn't realize that my course was more a theoretical course, so I didn't have any placement years, so I couldn't apply for a job as a biomedical scientist straight away. I needed to have done a master's with some placement and some practical experience to be able to work as a biomedical science. So
Okay.
in my in my rush to try and do something after graduating, I decided to apply for a master's in science, which I completed in UCD. And this master's, it was a program that required us to teach medical students anatomy in the lab. So we were anatomy demonstrators as well as doing our masters. It was a research master's. So
Mm,
that kind of opened up the path for me to see what medicine was like. So even though I wasn't a doctor and I wasn't a medic, we were still able to teach anatomy, and I was able to partake in some of their medical student tutorials. So that's where they use the anatomy in the practical sense. So it wasn't just about being able to label and see what different parts of the bodies and what it does. Um, these tutorial sessions were about what happens when it goes wrong. So when people have their illnesses and conditions, how to investigate, how to treat it. And that kind of sparked my interest. I'd always kind of thought about medicine, but never really felt that I was, you know, inclined to get into medical school or even do well
yeah.
to the exams to do medicine. So during my master's, the option came up to either continue my master's as a PhD or try and get into medical school as a graduate entry student. So I opted to sit the GAMSAT, which is what you need if you're doing graduate entry in Ireland. And my choices were, if I do well enough in that to get into medical school, I'll go to medical school. If I don't do well in that, then I'll continue my master's as a PhD. Um, and by the grace of God, the GAMSAT went okay. Ended up applying to all four medical schools, and I got enough points to go to any of the medical schools, but I went to University of Limerick, which is very close to my hometown in Ennis, so I could stay at home.
Yeah.
And medical school, which is quite, it's one less thing to worry about when you're
Mhm.
living. So
Yeah.
graduate degree was 4 years, so that was another 4 years of studying. So in total, I'd spent about 9 years, but it wasn't like I had initially intended to go that route to medicine, but it's just how things worked out. And then after graduating medical school, that was 2018, I applied to work in the UK. So I came here to do my foundation year training. So that's 2 years. And then after that, I took a two gap years, 2 years essentially. At that point, I wasn't quite sure what specialty I wanted to apply to. I was thinking about surgery, I was thinking about pediatrics. I was also thinking about general practice. Um, so early on, I in my two foundation years, I had a pediatric job, and I should have had a GP job, but because of COVID, I ended up staying in the intensive care unit, and I also had a surgical job. So I had a bit of experience in pediatrics and surgery. I felt pediatrics wasn't for me, working in the specialty. Um, so I took the gap years. I did a bit more surgical jobs, get get a feel for the different specialties. But at the end of the day, I felt the lifestyle just wasn't conducive to what I really wanted. So I ended up applying to general practice because I know, one, there's good flexibility in work-life balance once you finish training. And then also in general practice, you have the option of essentially carving out what kind of career you want to have. It's not like there's a career where you have to do A, B, C, D, E, and then you are certified
Mm-hmm.
specialist.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
finish your training, but if you decide, I can still decide to do some minor surgery. I can do women's health. I can do a little bit of pediatrics if I want. So I like that GP offered me that, whereas I didn't feel the other specialties would have given me the flexibility to kind of choose different specialties. So that's where I am now, my first year of GP training.
Oh, that's great. You said gap year. Gap year, someone will think, oh, she stopped practicing or what?
Oh yeah, so it's one way. It's the easiest way of just explaining it. So I guess essentially, if you're, in between secondary school and university, you could take a gap year where you haven't really gone into university, but you're either working or you're doing further education. So in medicine, you can take time out of training. So because I'm not a specialist, ideally you would just work and train all the way until you become a specialist and then start working. But the foundation training, the first 2 years are training, and then you go into your specialty training. So if that's GP training, pediatrics training, surgery training. So because I wasn't going into any of those, I just locum. So I worked with an agency for 2 years and I worked in different specialties. So even though I'm still working, I call it a gap year because I'm not actually training. So it gives you the opportunity to work in different specialties. No, not that there's no commitment. You do commit to provide the services, but you're also learning the different aspects of those specialties to see whether it gives you a feel about whether you would like to do that specialty or not. So the options are either work with a locum agency, or you can still work within a hospital and do what we would call a trust grade job. So essentially, it's like you're in a training program for a year or 2 years, depending on the contract you sign, and they can give you some training experiences as well. But there are different financial implications whether you go down the trust grade route or you go down the locum route. So I ended up doing the locum route because I knew I wanted to try different things.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Wow.
it's quite handy because by the grace of God, I was able to save enough money to buy a house before I'd even started training. So that was one for me. That was one pro of going down the locum route rather than doing the trust grade route.
Yeah. So in medicine is just about training, training, training. Like what I know is direct entry. If you know, oh, I want to do medicine, it's 6 years, right?
Five or
And
six years.
then you do training 2 years after that. Then for
So,
specialty, you do training again.
yes. So
Oh,
all they're always saying lifelong learning. even after you've even after you've qualified, depending on whatever specialty you do, you'll still have to keep up your learning every year. So they
yeah.
expect you to do a certain level of what we call CPD points. So it's essentially going to conferences or doing projects or doing different courses to continue, because I guess the guidelines are always changing. Medicine is so broad. New medications are coming out, new investigations, different types of blood tests, different, maybe a medication that's used for one thing they might have found out you can use it for multiple other things, or if a
Yeah.
medication is no longer safe. So with medicine, there's always learning. So even though you've graduated university and
Mhm.
you're an adult, they still expect you to, I guess, outside of training. In training, they still kind of guide us to make sure that we're
Mhm.
getting. But once you've finished, they expect you to continue with your self development and keeping up with the latest guidelines. So always
Wow.
learning.
Yeah, even life in general, you're always learning. But if someone is listening to this and just I have to pay my fees for 6 years, then when I graduate, I can really, the 2 years training after, are you getting paid or you still have to pay towards that training?
Oh, absolutely. Once you've graduated medical school, even though we say it's training and we're doing a fellowship or we're doing this, you're always getting paid. So, like for GP training, they call it a vocational training scheme. So, you're working and you're providing a service, but you're learning and you're being trained as you
Yeah.
work. So you're always still getting paid. And there's even, I guess, the good thing with medicine, just like nursing or any other allied health professional, there's always the option of picking up extra shifts. So if you do have a lot of fees or like student loans, there's also that option too. So even
Mm.
the options are there. Medicine, one thing is you won't become rich unless I think you're a plastic surgeon in the United States, maybe then. But you won't become rich, but there's always jobs around. So I think that you won't have to worry about money once you've graduated. Getting through the medical school is one thing, but once you've graduated, you'll start earning money as soon as you start working.
Okay, so that training is part of the course in a way. You will never be left out to say, I can't find anywhere to train. They have to slot you somewhere.
Yes, most of the time, yes. So when I was applying, because I think it's if you graduate in Ireland or it's the same, you can apply to the UK quite easily. But this is before Brexit. I don't know if anything has changed. And in Ireland
Mm,
too, usually they try to tally up the medical school places with the amount of internship places that are available. But I think one thing this year in the UK, usually what they do is they give the UK students and the European students essentially first dibs. They make sure all of those students have got a place first before they
yeah.
open up to
Mm-hmm,
international
mm-hmm.
graduates. But what I heard on the grapevine that they didn't do that this year, that they opened it
Mm,
up for everybody. So it made it, I
yeah.
think, it was a bit more tough for students to find a place. But I think at the end of the day, it might have just been that training was a bit delayed, that they couldn't get you to start when everyone else started, either in July in Ireland or August in the UK. But eventually, people got places.
Yeah. So why UK when you kind of graduated here? Why do you decide not to do the 2 years in Ireland? Why the UK?
As I think because my brother had moved to the UK and I had lots of my friends from my hometown had also moved to the UK long before I
Mm,
graduated medical school. So it's always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to be in the UK closer to my friends rather than being at home and having to travel back and forth all the time. So
yeah.
I wanted to do that. So I didn't feel that it would be advantageous for me to do internship in Ireland and then go and apply for further training in the UK. I thought it would have just been like a smoother route if I'd just gotten into the UK system straight
Yeah.
away and from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my reasoning more so for going to the UK.
Yeah, and that makes sense because you kind of foundation learning whatever system they have in the UK, you kind of started with that. And
Exactly.
so medicine was never in the picture when you were writing your living cert, not
It's
in your CAO options.
It wasn't that it wasn't part of my options. I had it further down, which doesn't really make sense because I was thinking about it. But then when I spoke to my guidance counselor, they kind of put the fear of God into me that you needed to get A. Even though I was getting A's and things like that in my leaving cert, they were saying you needed to
Yeah,
be the smart of the smart, and I actually can't even remember if there was I'm sure there was some kind of aptitude test to get into medicine as well, and they were
yeah,
like you have to study, you do very very well in that. Because I didn't really come from um in my background, there's no one who was a medic, so I didn't have anyone that I could go to for advice about applying
mm,
and how to study for the aptitude test because they kept saying you don't really need to study for it. It's just a test that you just take. Um, so I didn't feel like I didn't honestly I didn't feel like I would get in. So that's how I moved my things around and put biomedical science first because I've also when I was talking to her, she was the guidance counselor. She was saying you like science, why don't you just put biomedical science first? You can study about the different sciences and then you can narrow down whichever is your favorite option. So that was my reason for kind of switching my options around. On my CAO, which is in hindsight, I wish I hadn't listened to her, because I guess if I'd known that I can get into medical school and I can graduate and I can finish and become a doctor, I think I would have tried harder to get into medical school. But I think I was a bit discouraged and I didn't have really any other mentors to understand that there's options for you to go to medical school if that's what you wanted.
uh, so of what advantage, like now that you're a doctor, your first degree, can you see the difference in your skills and experience compared to fresh doctors that you work with now?
I think so. I think even when I was still in medical school, we were having our clinical rotations, the clinical attachments in hospitals. I think
Mm-hmm.
done a degree before, when you're already at least 4 years older. So you've been out in the world, you have a bit of experience, you understand how university life is. So I feel like that all helps, even just kind of getting you into the mindset of how to do well in university and how to essentially, because you're no longer at home where you're being spoon fed by your parents or spoon fed by
Yeah.
teachers. You're
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
to think about things like housing and grocery shopping and doing all your own cooking and your own laundry. So I think being a graduate entry student helped in that I was already prepped and primed, and I was like a well seasoned student, if you may. So I knew
Mm-hmm.
how to focus in school in graduate entry medicine. I feel like in biomedical science, I was just like most people, I was living my best life as a student. So I don't think I gave it as much focus as I did to medical school. And I feel like for myself, I did think it helped, because I think once I got to medical school, I graduated a lot more. And now that I see myself working, I can see the difference between graduate entry students and direct entry. And not that I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel generally the graduate entry students are just more well-rounded in that they've had a degree before, they've got good experience, they're a little bit older, a little bit more mature.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of know what they want and what they want to get out of either medicine or get out of the specialties that they're in their training bit in, or even if they're just doing their foundation rotations. I did feel I don't regret doing a graduate entry, if that makes sense. I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
was a lot
Mm-hmm.
more, I feel like I understood my brain better. I knew how to study better and do better on my exams. I understood how I better learned. Because I think even in medical school, I picked up some learning tips that I think if I had known that in secondary school, I would have done a lot better in my exams. It would have been a lot easier to get through schooling. So I feel like I did pick up a lot of life experience doing graduate entry. And I don't think I would regret it. I do often encourage people to do graduate entry if they're still kind of if they're not sure, or if they
Yeah.
kind of want things out. I would say it's absolutely fine to do a degree first. You don't 4 or 5 years more studying really does not make a difference in your medical career at the end of the day, because you're going to be working until you're 65 at this stage. Who knows if they're
Yeah.
going to raise the retirement age. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think it helps. For me anyway, I felt it helped, and I don't think I would change it. I don't think I would do it the other way around.
Oh, that's good to hear. And if you didn't do your masters, will you still be qualified to go through the graduate entrance to med school?
Yes, as long as you have an undergraduate degree, that's enough to enter graduate entry. So even in the UK, where their undergraduate degrees are 3 years versus 4 years in Ireland, as long as you've got the qualification, either a BSc or a BA, you're able to apply to medical school. So in Ireland, I don't. Well, when I applied, they weren't too specific about what degree you had. I know in the UK, they're a bit more specific. They'd rather health degrees or something along the allied health pathway in some medical schools. But I know in Ireland, in my class, I had some people who'd done women's studies or some people who studied history or archaeology. So it was a lot more it was a lot more lenient for who they accepted in Ireland. I'm not sure if that's changed now.
Oh, but that's just in the science area. Like I have business management. Can I go in?
Absolutely. When I was in medical school, yes, you could have gone in. We had
Oh,
people years who were doing medicine when I was doing the graduate entry. So I don't know if it's changed now. I knew when I was applying that the UK, there were a few schools that didn't really mind what degree you had, but there were a few schools that wanted something healthy or sciencey at least. So I'd say
yeah.
if you're thinking of graduate entry and you've not yet done your undergrad degree, I would just kind of verse yourself with what the entry criteria are for the different graduate entry schools, to make sure you're not limiting yourself too much if you end up doing a different degree that is outside of health sciences.
Yeah. Like my last guest, I was saying, you had your education system, like there was no break in between from junior infant all the way to graduating. And there you are, from junior infant, you had your degree, you did your master's, and you still think, I'm going more 4 years. Like, what is going on?
I know. I think I even had a few people who told me that I was a bit crazy. I should just get a job. and instead of going back to school. But I think because I'd done my undergrad and I'd done my master's, I knew that I liked science, but when I was doing my master's, it was a research master's. So it was purely, there wasn't, I think I had maybe one or two like teaching modules, but outside of that, it was purely research. So it was just sitting in a lab, me and the cells and the microscopes every day
Oh.
in, day out. So even though it was very interesting and I was learning new things and I was testing out different things and
Mm.
contributing to the body of science as a whole, I just felt that I don't know if I can sit in a lab for the rest of my days, not really talking to anyone except on my lunch break or my supervisor when we want to discuss something. So I felt, and I think because I had the opportunity to teach the medical students and see how they apply the knowledge that we had already had. And for me, I guess it was in anatomy, seeing how they apply the anatomical knowledge and seeing that they get to
Yeah.
interact with patients and other allied health professions. I felt, okay, I think I would be more suited to that because I am a bit of a people person. I like to talk. Felt that
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be a better option for me than science. And I think if at the end of the day I had to do science, I probably still would have enjoyed it, but maybe not as much as medicine. So I think that was like a spur, like something that kind of spurred me and kept me going. And I guess once I got into medical school and we started learning, I realized actually it's quite interesting everything that we're learning. And because it's the way medical school is set up, you have 2 years of preclinical, so that's 2 years in the university doing all the theory around medicine, and then if it's graduate entry, 2 years in the hospitals, or if it's undergrad, it would be 3 years in the hospital. So you get to
Mm.
use the knowledge that you've learned in practice. So it's like you're already seeing what it will be like to be a doctor. You're seeing
Yeah.
surgery,
Yeah.
taking blood tests, you're having conversations with patients. So even though it was
Mm.
flew by quickly because it's an interesting course, and I think because of the unique stress that you're under in medical school, as I'm sure if you're in other very high stress highly stressful degrees, um
Mm.
you form a close knit bond with your classmates. So it's quite nice to be, it's like you're almost in your own bubble. Even though I was in New Well,
Yeah.
didn't really know much that was going on with the rest of the campus because the medical school building is like at the back of the university. So you're all in your own bubble. You get to know each
Mm-hmm.
other. Medicine, there's lots of people from lots of different countries, lots of different cultures, lots of different religions. So you just learn so much about different people as well as learning about the interest of medicine. So I think
Wow.
that didn't really feel like it was an extra 4 years.
Mm. I'm like, oh my goodness, what was she thinking?
Yeah, they couldn't pay me now.
Oh, what happened there? Okay.
I'm saying no one could pay me to go back to school now, though. It's enough.
It's enough. You did try. Like the thing is, some people, their attributes, their personality, a bit of their gift, you can kind of sense this person will be this person will be that. What are the things that you notice about yourself to think, oh, I should do a science course? Okay, now I want to be a doctor.
So for me, the interest in science came from secondary school. So I always liked biology, and I think I liked that in biology you just had to memorize things, and it
Mm-hmm.
was interesting to know. I was more interested in human biology. I didn't really care so much for the plant botany and the animals and things like that, but I enjoyed that. And chemistry, it was also quite interesting to me, as well as languages. Funny enough, so those were my like optional subjects. It was two science and two languages. So I'd always kind of been interested in the science, and I didn't mind learning about new things and studying for the exams because I found it interesting. I think what
Mm-hmm.
added in medicine was that I know I'm a talkative person. My mom has always told me
Mm-hmm.
I'm very chatty. Friends have always told me I'm quite chatty. And
Mm-hmm.
once I kind of understood that medicine brought in the science, which I'd already liked, and people, I thought that that was a good mix because I can
Yeah.
learn things. And not that I wouldn't go back to school again, I wouldn't go back to
Yeah.
university, but the fact that you're always kind of learning new things. It almost keeps not that it keeps your mind young, but it keeps your mind active. You always have to kind of be learning, understanding things, even things that you felt you already learned. You probably are revising them when you come across them again if you don't come across them for a year or two. And I feel like also being able to like motivate yourself personally to be able to study and get up and go to work and always have a good attitude. And I think also empathy. I've always felt like whenever someone else is going through something, I do feel like it's like I almost take what they're feeling and bring it in
Yeah.
myself and feel that, and just have that urge to be able to try and help them in some way. So medicine gives you that opportunity. Like it's one of the few jobs where you have the privilege of essentially people allowing you into their lives to change even
Yeah.
one help it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better. That's one other thing about medicine. I feel like it's quite a fulfilling job. Even if you have patients who you can't do anything for, you will have the even those patients, that's still that subset of patients, they will still be very happy for the care that you've given them, for the dignity you've
Yeah.
been able to show them, to be able to, explain to them that, even things like death and dying, that you're not alone. There's ways that we can make it more comfortable. Even us being comfortable with the topic also helps patients transition, as we say in medicine, transition from this world to the next. So I feel like it's a privilege to be able to do that and use all the knowledge that we've gotten from medical school. So I feel like all those things encompassing, and I guess just even just having an outgoing, bubbly personality. You don't necessarily have to have that, because I think the good thing about medicine is it's so broad. If you love the science and you love to help people, but you don't necessarily enjoy, or you're not a chatty person, there are specialties that cater to that. If you're someone who loves children, you love babies, there's specialty that caters to that. If you're someone
Yeah.
who go in, you see a problem, you fix it, and that's it, you don't need to think about it, there's specialties for that. If you're someone who
Yeah.
likes to be like, you like to be in the midst of all the trauma and the really unwell patients, the gunshot wounds, the accidents, there's a specialty for that. Whereas if you like helping people who are terminally ill, discussing their options, pain relief, making them feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable so that they have a good experience of the like a good death experience, either the patient or the family, there's a specialty for that. So I think you don't necessarily have to fit one certain box for medicine. There's like places for different types of people in medicine, as long as you enjoy the subject to be able
Yeah.
to get examinations and study. I think there's lots of options there as well. So that's another
Oh,
good
yeah.
thing.
That's good. There's this terminology that people will say junior doctors. Are those like when you finish 6 years, like direct entry, your 2 years of training, that's what you are, a junior doctor.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's a saying that they overwork junior doctors. Is that true?
Do you know, if I compare it to our colleagues in the States, I would say we have it easy. But there,
Okay.
there's some truth to that. Training is quite hard. You can, because you have your regular working days, but then you have the on-call shifts, because not like shops or businesses, medicine unfortunately is not 9 to 5. People get unwell every single hour of the day. So what that means is we need to ensure that there's always doctors, there's always staff covering
Around.
seven
Yeah.
7 week. So usually what happens when you're in training is that honestly you're stuck on a rota. So there's rota coordinators who will make the rota plan. And you will have your normal 9 to 5 days, but you will have still a lot of on-call shifts. And the way in which medicine works is that you probably find that you learn a lot more on the on-call shifts, because you're usually the first port of call if the only doctor covering a certain number of wards. So you see all the acutely unwell patients, and then
Yeah.
the senior, you can make the management plan. So I think in the UK, they try their best to follow the 48-hour working time directive. So at least they're quite good here to try and stick to. You do have the option, if you want to do extra hours, you can opt out and do more hours. But I think compared to what it was like for my consultants now when they were training, it's a lot better. They were doing 100-hour weeks. It's not really heard of anymore, unless you actively choose to do extra locum shifts for extra money. They will never really sign you up for that. So you do have the odd time where you might have a weekend, so you have a Saturday, Sunday, and then you've got a week of normal days. So you essentially work 7 days in a row, but they'll try to give you some days off after it. But I that's another reason for coming to the UK. I know the UK is a little bit better than Ireland when it comes to the working times. I think they stick to it a bit better. Like in the UK, if you're on call, it's really only for 12 hours. I've never had to do a 24-hour on call shift, whereas my colleagues in Ireland from very frequently doing 24-hour shifts, sometimes even 36-hour shifts, where it's not really done in the UK. But I think when you're compensated for the hours most of the time anyway, so if you do have to work extra, they should pay you for that, and they should also give you time off. But it is still, training is still quite difficult. You're tired a lot of the time, but I think as you the more the more senior you become, I think the easier it gets, especially when you're getting through training. So now that I'm in GP training, I guess when I'm in hospitals, I'll still be on the on-call rota, but for the most part, outside of it, GP is 9 to 5, which is another one of the reasons why I wanted to pick GP. So I guess it depends what you want to, what you want, what you would like in life. What is some people, they love the specialty so much they don't care if they work 100 hours. They will, like, I feel like
Mm.
thinking more of surgical specialties. Operations can be 9 hours long. So that means you could be in work for 5 extra hours because you needed to do the operation for that patient, and then
Mhm.
unfortunately
Mhm.
come in the next day. So there are some specialties that have more emergencies than others. GP doesn't really have. If there is an emergency, you deal with the patient, but essentially you need to send them into the hospital. So I
Yeah.
think people who do pick surgery, this is something I had to think about. Is like if you do pick surgery, there's like there's the notion that you've accepted that that's also going to be a part of the surgical training life. And also when you're a consultant, if you're doing, say if you do breast surgery, for example, that's what I was thinking about doing. You probably won't have a lot of emergencies. Like there's really no life-saving breast operations that need to be done at 2 a.m. in the morning. But
Yeah.
if you pick a specialty like colorectal surgery, that's what I was working in a lot of. Um, Very frequently, you can come in at 2 a.m. because there's a medical emergency and they need the operation now. So I think it really, I feel like people who do go into those specialties, they have a passion for it, they have a love for it, they don't actually mind doing those hours. So I think it
Yeah.
depends what you want to get out of it, really. So for me, I said that's it's not for me. I don't love it that much.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm taking it personal now. So if somebody is on call, they expect them to keep their eyes open for 36 hours
In Ireland,
or 24 hours. Yeah.
I think you should get breaks, because I know when we work 12-hour shifts, you're entitled to a 1 hour break. So I would expect it's the same in Ireland, but because I've not worked there, I don't know. But even just from chatting to some of my colleagues, even though they're on call for the 24 hours, they say they're able to still get some sleep. So it might just be that the hospital environment is not as pressured as it is in the UK, because I feel like in the UK,
Mhm.
if I was to work a 24-hour shift, I wouldn't sleep, because even for a 12-hour shift, sometimes I can't get my break because it's that busy. But I think based on what my colleagues have said in Ireland, they're still able to sleep, even if it's like 5 or 6 hours, they can get that sleep in the 24-hour shift. So I think I'd say that the patient population or the patient numbers might not be as overwhelming as it is in the UK.
Yeah. But there's nothing like your own bed.
Nothing, absolutely nothing like your own bed. No nurses, nothing, nobody calling you. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
like with the COVID-19, the last 2 years, how was that like?
That was tough. So when COVID started, I was in intensive care as part of my foundation training. So we were just, learning about intensive care and things like that. And then COVID hit. So because of that, they didn't want to move the doctors around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that means I stayed on intensive care to my detriment. I did not want to stay there because I knew it was going to be very, very stressful and very
Yeah.
busy. And it was overwhelming, I would say, because I think even when COVID started, I was on a night shift with another trainee, and I think our numbers almost tripled the amount of patients we had. I was used to an ITU, we just had 11 beds, but it went up to 30 beds, and they were all COVID patients, and they were all very, very unwell, on life support. So it was tough, because one, you had so many patients coming in, they were all equally very, very unwell. There were instances where our unit was full, and there were still patients who needed to come in. So that's difficult. What do you do in that situation? Um,
Yeah.
you couple that with our own colleagues getting COVID and having to self-isolate and being sick. And I think I was probably one of the only people at the first lockdown. I never got sick. I never got COVID at all. So I was at work all the time. And because you're doing 12-hour shifts with the PPE, And like, I think thankfully, as doctors, we go in, we do the ward round, we can go out and check on different things. But I really did empathize with the nursing staff, because they're the ones who are in there with the patient. They're one on one for the whole 12 hours, apart from when they're on their
Yeah.
break. They were in the PPE. It's warm, it's stuffy. It was emotionally draining because patients were dying left, right, and center. Their relatives couldn't come and say goodbye. That was tough,
Yeah.
tough on the patients, tough on the relatives. Um, it was quite hard, and I think for the most part, it was nice to see that most people, were sticking to the government guidelines of self isolating, because I guess once, if you can't see what's happening in the hospitals, it's very hard to appreciate the gravity of the situation that the COVID-19 pandemic brought. But it was nice to be able to see that people were actually listening to the government guidance. They were trying to socially distance. They were, wearing their PPE when they went out, and only went out for important things. So that did help. And I know they were doing the NHS claps as well for the staff. So that was also nice to know that people were there with us. But I think
Mm-hmm.
all overall, I think it was quite difficult. I guess none of us ever thought we would come out of medical school and have to work in a pandemic
Yeah.
and work
Mm-hmm.
in a, where I guess most things we'd learnt about it in medical school, or you'd heard about it, or somebody would know about it. COVID-19 was new for everybody. So something would
Yes.
happen, would ask, and nobody really knew how to approach it or what to do. So that was also
Mm-hmm.
kind of a unique difficulty in a sense. But I think
Yeah.
with a good team around you, we form very close bonds, because it's like you went through something so emotionally draining, that I guess only you guys understand. And then I guess the people who got sick, and unfortunately there were staff members who passed away and things like that. So it was quite difficult, but
Yeah.
it's I'm glad that we're kind of through it now. I know the COVID numbers are coming back up, but it doesn't seem to be as severe as it was the first time round. But it
Mm-hmm.
was tough. And I think I feel more for the medical students who graduated, and they went straight into the hospital, because we needed the numbers. We need
Yeah.
help. So I do feel for them, because they would have just felt so overwhelmed. But I think
Yeah.
everyone rallied through, everyone helped each other, and we did the best that we could with the situation.
Yeah. And here we are now. If
Exactly.
anyone could survive that 2 years, like, they can survive anything. Now, let's say you didn't do medicine or you are not a doctor. What other profession comes to mind to say, I could have been that. Maybe I would do better in that, or something like something else, a second option.
This is very funny, because even as I was working in surgery for the past year, there was myself and one other consultant. We'd just be joking about, gosh, medical life is difficult, but we couldn't think of anything else that we would actually want to do. Um, I was thinking, what am I good at? If anything, because of my first degree, it probably would have been science, something sciencey. So either a PhD and maybe lecturing in a medical school, or a biomedical scientist in a hospital laboratory running the laboratory samples. Those are the only two things I think I would consider. But I don't think I would. I think being a doctor now, I don't think there's anything else I would actually want to do, because I don't know what else would give me the satisfaction I get from medicine.
Yeah, the joy.
The
Yeah.
Exactly, and the diversity of what we see. Like today, I've seen, so like every patient I've seen today, all very very different, and even some things I'm still learning. I guess I'm still in training, but things I hadn't seen before, I'm still learning. I can't think of another job that would give me that satisfaction, because I guess speaking to patients, they tell us about what they do. I could never do economics, I could never do accounting. I feel like I couldn't do software engineering. I just I couldn't see myself enjoying it, or even sitting in an office and doing like an office based job. But I think if I had to choose, it would probably be something to do with the sciences, or because I like singing, maybe something musical as well, if it's like singing
Mhm.
or something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Now, a advice for your younger self. Remember that time you're putting out your choices on your CAO form, and then you're thinking maybe this should be my first choice, maybe this number two. Just advise your younger self, somebody looking at you now who is thinking, maybe medicine, oh, it's too tough. Maybe I'll do something else. A
I
word of
would
advice.
A word of advice is, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something is too difficult, because I feel like if it's in God's plan become a doctor, you will get there regardless of what anyone else thinks. And I
Yeah.
also, I feel like don't allow people to plant those seeds of doubt, because it only takes a seed and then it will water, it will flourish. And that's how you will now think you will never be a doctor, you will never be good enough, you will never be smart enough. Even in my undergraduate degree, when I was talking to some of my supervisors about medicine, one of my lecturers used to tell me, you're not smart enough to do medicine. If you're going to do graduate entry, you need lots and lots of money. So it's like, I feel like along the way, I always had people kind of planting seeds of discouragement. So I would say to my younger self, even though it's difficult to not listen to people who you feel are in a position of authority or someone
Yeah.
who you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
acknowledge, if it's in your heart to become a doctor, if it's in your heart to do anything, I would say reach for the stars. If you don't reach for the stars, you will land on the moon, rather than someone telling you to only reach for the sky, because then you won't push yourself to work as hard as you can. Like I never, not that I didn't consider myself to be smart, but I didn't know that I had more of an ability than I had.
Yeah.
And like if I had the I guess the hindsight to know to encourage me to work harder, then I would have definitely advised myself to just work as hard as you can, and don't let anyone's preconceptions of what they feel like you can only achieve, don't allow that to be what is your reality. If you feel that this is something you want to do, I would say work as hard as you can. Even if you don't get it the first time, you try again, do it the second time, try it, keep trying. I feel like I gave up because I thought, oh, what's the point, they know much better than I do. But
Yeah.
I feel like don't give up. And if anything, if you have, you can always, you like, there's always a balance, there's always a scale. You can have people discouraging you, but you will equally find someone who would encourage, who will guide you down the path that you need to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have the resources, or who I needed to speak to help me in how in different ways of studying, to get the best results, or even different ways of what you needed to do to get here, what you need to do to get here, or even thinking about applying to the UK. I don't even know why I didn't think of that either, like applying for a university in the UK. These are
Yeah.
feel like I feel like if I was to give myself anything, is never let anyone discourage you, and always try your best. Even aim higher than what you think you can achieve, because you actually don't know what is the power that you have within you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I feel like
Sometimes
ultimately,
we find ourselves in a situation like being strong is the only, you know, behavior you can show. You don't have any other choice but to kind of pull through. Oh
absolutely.
my God, you have really blessed us. I'm so blessed. Thank you
Oh,
so much for honoring this invitation. I really appreciate it. I don't want to keep you too long. Now,
that's
if somebody is looking at you and think, oh, I like her, she can be my mentor, how can they reach out to you? Your social media platforms.
So I'm really just on Instagram. So my Instagram is Miss_Funks. So I think it's MISS_FUNKS. Or
Mhm.
if you type Funke Owolabi, you can find my LinkedIn. I don't really check my LinkedIn often, but if you prefer to go via LinkedIn, that's also another option.
Yeah,
And then if you'd like to even send me an email, it's my first name, so Funke, FUNKE .Owolabi, OWOLABI, at outlook.com. So those are any way to reach me. And usually I'm quite good at responding to
yeah,
most things, except for
yeah,
LinkedIn. Not usually on
yeah.
it all.
So don't worry, guys. If you didn't get that, I'll put it in the description box. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. Hopefully, in the future, if we have something we have to discuss, we will invite you again. Thank
Absolutely.
you
I'll be
so much. Thank you so much. So there you have it. That's our episode 5. So I'll come your way again. Take care now. Bye, Warriors.